we invite guests to come by and get high with us here in Nevada's original Cannabis Lounge. So let's get into it. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the NuWu Sessions podcast. We're here for episode 38 with Miss Jozalyn Sharp. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
So stoked to have you here. For those who don't know, Miss Jozalyn's been a headliner multiple times here for the NuWu Comedy Club. So she's no stranger to NuWu, and we got tons of things to talk about, which we'll dive in here shortly. But before we start, let's talk about our cocktails here. We got a special one here that we made just for Miss Jozalyn. Right? Yeah. We got some fancy lemon waters that's infused, right?
Yeah, so it's less sugar.
There you go.
I'm watching my macros.
Hey, beautiful. And I'm sipping on this classic Blue Dream here. If I can get there we go. Beautiful.
You don't have
Cheers.
to, get sugar to get high.
It's a good message, you know what I mean? We might put this in the road.
It wasn't a good message. It was barely English, but okay.
It happens, I have said a few times on this podcast that I'm like, we were talking about edibles before the show, but I'm like, if I had like 3 of these during a day, I feel like, my gout might flare up before I'm actually feeling the edibles sometimes, So it is good to have one that has less sugar and a little better for you, So, let's dive into this, Miss Jozalyn. So for those who are not familiar with Miss Jozalyn Sharp, she's an American stand-up comedian, podcaster, and digital content creator local here to Las Vegas, Nevada. She has headlined the NuWu Comedy Club several times, like we just said, and she can also be seen on the Weed Maps original series, Tumbleweeds, hosted by Mr. Killer Mike, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. That is available on Hulu and Vice TV. She also has her comedy special out, 510 280, available on YouTube and Prime Video. But I want to talk before all of that, I want to talk about a young Jozalyn Sharp and how she got introduced to the magical green plant that we all know and love. What was your first time smoking weed like, Jozalyn?
Well, I actually had a friend in middle school who had leukemia. And when she went into remission, she had this big party at her house.
Okay.
And she smoked and she had these THC pills and she had a bunch of weed. And we just smoked it all and took the THC pills. And it was my first time smoking weed. I mixed it with Smirnoff Ice. Not a great combination.
Right.
But that's mostly the Smirnoff's fault. And that was my first foray into it. It didn't really do anything.
Okay.
Most people, the first time you do it, you don't really feel much. I was more feeling the Smirnoff. But then as I got older, it was just sort of around because I was in the punk rock music and metal scenes and people were always smoking weed. And eventually it just became part of something that I did. And I stepped away from it for a while. And then I came back to it as medicine in my mid-20s.
Gotcha. That is unlike, I guess, a lot of people's stories. So when you said you didn't feel it, did you also take the THC pills or were you just smoking the flower?
Yeah.
Wow. So you didn't get high with the actual like inhalation or an edible?
Well, I wonder sometimes if people think that you're not high, but they are because I fell asleep and I just attributed it to the Smirnoff.
The Smirnoff, right. Yeah,
but
no, I get that.
More than likely it was because I had taken a THC pill. It was a very weird night. We ate a bunch of expired Halloween candy and watched the movie Event Horizon, which you shouldn't let 13-year-old girls alone with drugs, let alone with expired Halloween candy and a movie that they shouldn't be watching about the end of the earth or whatever it was.
Just getting too high in your own head about the whole thing. Too high
and too paranoid and too 13 to be doing those things. But then I got older and it was a much more pleasant experience in my 20s.
So when you were reintroduced to it in your 20s, did you start just becoming an everyday user right off the bat, or was that kind of a gradual process for you?
I was just a casual party user all my life. And then in my mid to late 20s, I started getting introduced to cannabis as medicine. I had a hip surgery when I was 12 or 11 and I have pretty bad arthritis or had pretty bad arthritis, and cannabis was one of the easiest ways for me to get regular relief. On top of that, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and although my meds do a lot, there's just some things that prescription medication can't touch, like everyday fluctuations in anxiety, fluctuations in mood. I can actively treat and combat those things with different terpene profiles. And so I became really obsessed with the chemistry of THC, and I became really obsessed with the chemistry of cannabis itself and how it interacts with our bodies and how we can use that to treat different things, like how you literally prescribe strains to treat different things based on what people need. And then the pandemic hit, and when comedy was just sort of dead, I thought, well, now's the time to just jump into cannabis full time. And that when I became an everyday user, when I became a bud tender.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. How long ago?
I was an everyday user before that. I was just
I'm being honest. Here,
I'm why am I trying to make it sound like I wasn't? But I really was an everyday user for probably 25 until now.
That's awesome. So, and you're still an everyday user to this day, right?
Oh, yeah.
What does a typical sesh look like for Jozalyn?
I usually smoke depending on what it is. Like I'll do a couple dabs if I'm doing a dab, or if I'm doing flower, I'll smoke between like 1 gram to 2 grams. I really just love sitting around and having weed with my friends. That's like probably my favorite part about weed.
The social aspect.
Yeah,
right?
I love the anxiety relief, and I love the relaxation, and I love all those things, and those are great. But as an ex-cigarette smoker, like I miss cigarettes.
Right.
I really miss cigarettes, and getting to like crack a joint with all my friends and just like pull on it and chat and bullshit is probably one of my favorite things to do on the planet. And then plus you're getting high, so you're giggly and you're riffing, and it just, I don't know, I feel like that's peak experience for me.
There you go. I love a joint myself personally. Like that's one of my go-tos. But you're right, it also does help in the social aspect, because personally, I mean, I don't know, since I started working in the industry and started smoking more weed, I guess is the way to put it, it's not the same, I feel like, with the bong or with the pipe or any of the other mediums that like I preferred before, because it's just like, all right, well, we just got 2 hits, and now I'm like, I want to do that like again, like
and we
5
have to
more times.
reload it.
Yeah, it's so much more work. Just roll a fat joint, right? Easy.
Yeah,
so.
like my friend and I were trying to do dabs together the other day in my kitchen, and I'm like, let me just load one for you, and then I'll load one for me. We'll just do it that way.
Easier that way, 100%. Less work. So, as an everyday user, do you have any like go-to strains that you really enjoy?
I'm really looking for terpenes. So truthfully, a lot of people put too much faith in strains, and I don't know, this might be a hot take, but plants are plants, and just like people, there is a Punnett square of the DNA that can come out. I mean, I don't know if it works exactly the same in, botany, but there's different ways that plant DNA can come about, and that cross strain, whatever it is, can come out with different terpene profiles. And the terpene profiles are really what I'm looking for my peak experience. For daytime smoke, I really look for terpinolene dominant strains. Those strains will smell like gas. I love the gassy smell, number one.
Right.
Great flavor, but that's I call it the video game strain, because it's really good for like mental focus. It's really good for doing chores. It's really good for talking. But you don't get super sleepy. You get elevated and elated, but you don't get super sleepy. So I look for terpinolene dominant strains regardless of the strain. And then if I want nighttime smoke, I'm obviously looking for like a myrcene or a linalool dominant, something super heavy that's going to put me in the couch.
There you go.
I'm just like a terpene girl all the way. I'm chasing terpene profiles.
Hey, that just means she's educated. She clearly knows her shit, I mean, just to piggyback on what you were just saying regarding the genetics, I've had those conversations with, friends, colleagues, what have you, several times, exactly like you said. I mean, I'm personally the oldest of 5 kids, and me and all my brothers and sisters are much different people. But the same way, even if you have the same mom and dad plant, to make the strain, if you're calling it monster cookies or whatever, if you're going to have different phenos, they're all going to be drastically different regarding effect and how those terpenes come out. So I think you're 100% right. You can't really rely on the strains. I mean, I personally have like favorite strains that from like my early days in the industry or something that just makes me, I guess, nostalgic. But you're right, as a consumer, if I'm down in the dispensary right now buying weed, like I don't give a fuck about the strain name. I really care about the terpenes.
The terpenes, but if you go to other states, terpenes are not common. It's really difficult. So you kind of do have to lean on, and you can still lean on the strains. You are going to know, like, I know Blue Dream is always going to kind of live in that Blue Dream area. Mm-hmm. But for someone like me who is avoidant of pinene, where pinene can always end up in those top terpenes,
absolutely,
I have to be very careful with Blue Dream, because if it's too pinene, it's going to give me anxiety. And that's the opposite effect of what I'm looking for.
100%.
So yeah, the strains are good, but everyone should be reporting terpenes. It's really the only way to medicate yourself, I think, personally.
Yeah. And I do wish more markets were on board. The only other market that I know that tests terpenes is Missouri, which is personally where I'm from, and it's weird. I think I've said it a few times on this podcast, where it's weird, like going home and one, the fact there's even legal weed, or two, that I can shop the same way I do here at home.
Yeah.
Could any other market, Colorado, California, Washington, any of the ones that I've personally experienced, like, you just rolling blind. Like,
well, and in Portland, it's still, you're picking your nugs out of a jar. You're pointing. Style. Yeah, you're pointing to the nugs you want. So you can only shop off of smell and look, which a lot of people are confident. And truthfully, there's a lot of studies that say that the reason that smell is so linked to the weed that we enjoy is it's because it's linked to our central nervous system. So our brain will tell us what strains we need to smoke. If we smell a strain and it smells dusty and dirty and gross, don't smoke that strain. It's not for you. But if you smell a strain and it smells really good and appetizing and you want to keep smelling it, that's a sign from your brain that those terpenes are good for your chemistry.
There you go.
So you can shop really smartly with smell, but I still feel like I'm just such a terpene queen at this point. I feel so blind without them. I'm like, what do you mean? How do I know if this is going to make me anxious? And they're like, you just got to smoke it. And I'm like, Man, the 80s were wild.
Yeah. Hell yeah. So this is probably a good segue. I think we've talked enough about weed that maybe we should start smoking some.
I would
right?
love to.
Let's get it
said
started.
weed, so I kept trying to say it, thinking that would cue some weed to show up since we're in a dispensary. I didn't know
right?
if it was like Beetlejuice,
She's like, come
and if I
on,
said
I'm
it 3 times.
jonesing right there.
I'm waiting for the 3 times.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'm bringing you guys some weed and get you started. Here's some ashtrays for
Thank
you
you, Miss
guys.
Yo-Yo.
Just some weed.
Just a little
Some
bit.
weed.
This is actually one of our many unique packages that we have here at the lounge. We have our JB Bong, our Dr. Dabber. It's actually one of my favorites. I have a pipe if you don't want to use the bong. We have a couple extracts, your flower, this cool rolling tray that I like to look at myself in, some ISO. We have some pre-rolls. Yeah, you guys are definitely going
This
to get
is so
high.
gangster.
Some
If
weed,
you want to roll
right?
your flowers and not use your bowls, and I do have some of our Packwoods cones, raw cones, different options. We have a wick if you want to, would you say no sugar so you don't need to get high? Do it organic. There you go.
I love that.
Think
Keep that
we should
butane out of your lungs.
Yeah.
We have
100%.
some Q-tips to keep your Dr. Dabber clean, and then I have a couple of grinders for you guys.
Wow. Full service.
Get
Beautiful.
super high, guys. Enjoy.
Thank you, Yaya.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Wow.
Look at all that weed. So how would you like to get started?
Can I inject it all into my veins right now? No,
Let's
I
make
would
it happen.
love to do a pre-roll. And I can see this one's terpinolene dominant right here, actually.
Oh, get it.
Very dominant. 10.6 millis. That's a good
She said, there you
terpene.
go. She said, that's me right there. I'll
Yeah,
get this
that's
other
all
guy.
me.
What we got here? We got a little fine rolly.
I do love fine flower, but virtue flower is great too.
No, and if you know that one's got the terpenolene you want in here,
Yeah.
let's see what we got here. Oh, yeah, and we got some lighters there. Those are going to help get the job done. And, like Aya said, the hemp wicks for the dub, right?
I tried to get my father-in-law started on those hemp wicks, and he couldn't stand it.
It is. It's a little cumbersome, but,
It's worth it to not have to.
yeah, not to actually, taste the butane. Mm-hmm. I know personally at home, if I'm going to be going for a bong load, because I do still do the occasional bong load, I just, I've had a lot of hemp wick, and I always, misplace it. It's another step in the equation that always gets lost
I
somewhere.
have the big ball. I have
Okay,
the
yeah.
giant ball
Yeah.
version, so it's very difficult.
There
to
you go.
use. But I'm just a lazy stoner. I will literally have a tray full of weed at home, and I will stop and buy a pre-roll just so as soon as I get home, I can
Convenience,
just
right?
smoke. Yeah, because I prefer the convenience sometimes. It's also, I think, why I like joints is because I miss smoking cigarettes, and this gives me that scratches that itch for me. Because cigarettes were all vibe for me. I
Right.
loved the nicotine. Don't get me wrong, but just getting to smoke and space out, and it's such a powerful thing.
I don't know if you've seen the Indo smokes, but they're kind of modeled after a pack of cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really awesome. They're all crutched. You get 10 in a pack, and they come with a little book of matches. But it looks like what you would anticipate, a Marlboro green.
What
would
we
look like, or
thought it
something
was
like
going to
that.
look like
Exactly.
when we got legalized.
Yeah, but they're not cones. They calls them canna rolls.
Yeah.
So they're all rolled like one super long joint.
More
when they cut 'em.
cigarette,
But,
yeah.
It's just an interesting product because I know we had Pat on here who created that product. He's the co-founder of that brand. And he was talking about it because he was a cigarette smoker for a long time. And he's like, they did tons of R&D and research. You know what I mean? I think the form factor works. It just hasn't really been adopted by the cannabis industry. So it's cool. And especially, again, for that nostalgia factor.
I think form and size matters a lot. I was writing this in my notes for the NuWu Cup about 2 of the vapes. I have loved AeroPro for a long time. I know the owner at this point because I'm an AeroPro stan. I have been
There you go.
from jump. The
yeah.
story of it's brilliant. The way that the vape works is brilliant. You never waste a drop of oil when you're using those. I love them. But I think one of the things that they understood that other vapes haven't yet, especially with the 510 thread ones, is the size. It has a more satisfying grip size in AeroPro versus a thin 510 threaded vape.
Yeah.
And there's another vape that was in the Judge's Cup backpack that is thick like that from a different company.
Okay.
And it's now my other favorite
There
that
you
I've
go.
ever tried. And I think a lot of it has to do with being able to hold it comfortably.
Yeah. I mean, I know personally a lot of just the 510 and those thinner batteries, I've personally broken in my pocket, you know what I mean? Or just they fall apart, Personally, I like the smaller, more handheld ones or something like that because for me, it'll just if I'm in my car, it rolls out of my lap or something like that, ends up in the abyss between my center console and
my God.
Yeah, I've lost so many vapes.
I'm like, did they design these so I would lose it in my car?
Yeah, they'd be like, oh fuck, you need to go buy another one. Shucks.
Well, we were going into the Magic Convention. I play Magic the Gathering, and we went this weekend to the Magic Convention. And I had gone to when we were young and had to throw away a vape because I had forgotten that if it looks like weed, they sometimes will make you throw it away at concerts.
100%.
And it looked like weed, so I had to throw it away. And so we were going to the Magic Convention, and I was digging through my purse. I'm like, I guess I should take all of my vapes out. There was 5 vapes in my purse, just because I'll lose it, and then I'll just go buy another vape because they're not sized for. But to your point, if you go to like a smoke shop or something, or even and some of the dispensaries sell them now, you can buy like those square vape batteries that look like a nicotine vape.
Yep.
Much better for hand holding.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very, very discreet, and for just the point.
We need the ergonomics, man. We're old stoners.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
We got carpal tunnel.
And to the point of you just saying with like 5 vapes in your purse, there was one time, I think it was shortly after the pandemic, I remember going to Fremont Street, and it was still like, you weren't able to get into the Fremont Street experience proper without going through like a security checkpoint and like a metal detector, which was the only night I'd ever seen it. But I remember I was like, oh, well, this is weird. I've been down here several times, never seen that before. I'm like going through there, and I felt so weird because there's a cop as far away as you and I are right now, and I'm like emptying my pockets. I had like 6 vapes just like in my jean pockets that I'm emptying in front of this cop. I'm like, I think that's over the legal limit. Am I about to get jammed up? Is he gonna take my vapes? And he literally just put a flashlight. It's like, you're good. And I'm like, fuck, man. The days we're living in, pretty wild.
Most cops don't care. Do you know who cares? Brooklyn Bowl. I don't know why the fuck they care, but those fucking, they're jamming it with their little security nightstick. He's like, you can't take that inside. I'm like, to the death metal concert?
Yeah.
Let me have my drugs at the death metal concert.
He's just like, oh, that's one of those good vapes. I want that one,
Basically, I'm sure he dug it out of the trash when I left. Yeah, it's getting to a place now where I love, like, even like the Sky High Lounge here. Like, I'm trying to get my best friend to come into town. She's like my stoner sister. We have always grown up smoking weed together, and we both love to sing. And there's karaoke here. Yeah, I'm like, you have to come visit on a Wednesday. Yeah. We have to go do dabs at the Sky High Lounge and sing karaoke.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've sang a lot of drunk karaoke. I am interested to see who I am when I sing high karaoke. I don't know that girl, so I would like to meet her. I don't know what she's up to.
I feel that. I know anytime, I think we were just talking about this the other day, is anytime I've done karaoke, it's usually I'm like, I've got to be pretty good in slosh. And as a musician, I play on stages all the time, but there's something about just going up there, like, there's no band, there's no music. I'm just like, man, that you just gotta have a little liquid courage is all it is.
I grew up singing on stage, and I still can't, like, I was a little musical theater actress, so it's different because I'd be singing in like accents or voices. I was a character actress. So I always am doing like something way outside of who I am, but like singing as yourself, just being yourself. It's like comedy a little bit. Like I explained to somebody one time, I'm like, it's hurts your feelings. Comics get their feelings hurt, not because it's like, oh, you're criticizing my art. When you're criticizing my comedy, you're criticizing me. For the most part, most of us as comics are just presenting ourselves on stage or a hyperbole version of us.
Right.
So I think it's like the same thing when you're up there singing karaoke. Like, you're really by yourself. It's not your song. They've heard somebody else do it better already.
Yeah, exactly. No, I feel that. And I've always felt there's a lot of just synergy between musicians and stand-up comedians, and lots of people talk about that because they're very similar lifestyles and art forms at the end of the day. Personally, I've always felt like, I'm like, man, stand-up comics, like y'all just got balls. Because like I said, if I'm up there, I've got a band, I've got all this noise to hide me, behind, and that's fine. But like, I'm just up here with the microphone. That's like, okay, I've got some nerves right now.
Bombing for 45 minutes as a comedy club headliner is a spiritual exercise. that will send you up the Nirvana chain a couple levels. Like, that gets you some karmic retribution.
I'm sure.
It's painful, but it's also like really satisfying when you do well for 45 minutes. And I'm like the biggest proponent of, and I think people have a hard time with social media remembering this, you have to be really shitty at stuff before you're really good at it.
100%.
And you have to be willing to be embarrassed and put yourself out there and do it embarrassing and do it bad and do it wrong and do it tired and learn how to do it really good. And that's the only way to do it. So bombing for 45 minutes got me to, being here, and so I'll take it.
There you go.
I mean, it still is painful, and I think about it every night before I fall asleep. That's what keeps me up at night. But
lives rent free in my head, right? Yeah.
Literally, 100%. A woman literally passed out in the front row, and when I tried to stop the show to be like, you guys aren't even having a good time, the audience was like, the 8 people, by the way, that were in the audience, they were like, no, we love you, and I'm like, you haven't laughed for 40 minutes.
You could show me, you're doing a great job.
You could express it in the slightest.
Oh yeah. So Well, let's talk about here. What were you doing before you started getting into stand-up?
We like literally took 85 tangents. Sorry, I'm so bad about
It's fine. We started having conversations over some joints. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? Oh yeah.
Before I started doing stand-up, I was really just kind of floating around. I really didn't have a purpose. I was just working whatever full-time jobs paid the best. I'm from rural America, and in rural America, there's always like the one company everybody goes and works for, the one industry everyone's trying to get into. Yep. And so I was always just trying to look for like either getting a job with a distribution center or Tesla or some of these places that were near my small town where I could make a lot of money. It wasn't Tesla at the time, but we had similar like Bay Area companies coming in. And I didn't really know what to do. I was going through breakups. I was drifting around the country, and I knew I wanted to do stand-up. And I had been with a guy at the time, and I told him, I want to do stand-up comedy. And he was like, "Why, you're not funny?" And I was a 20-year-old girl, so I was like, yeah, of course, whatever my boyfriend says is correct. So I'm not funny. And I just took that as a fact and lived like that for a while. And then I moved to Vegas after a rough spot in my life. And the very first person I met was a stand-up comedian here locally. And he introduced me to the local comedy scene. And they became my core group of friends. And it just sort of like fell into it. And I started dating a different comedian. Made me sound like a hoe, but I mean, I really was hoeing. It was a fast turnaround. But I started dating a different comedian, and at the time I was just his girlfriend. And then, him and his friends encouraged me to get on stage, and I did. And it turned out that I was pretty good at it, and I still wanted to do it really badly. So I let that dream be resurrected, and the rest is history at this point.
There you go. No, I mean, that's awesome. I think we all deal with that no matter what your creative outlet is. You know what I mean? I think as people, we all kind of innately, we're listening to the feedback around us. You know what I mean? We take it for truth, but just like you were just saying, you can't do anything well until you've done it poorly a number of times. So I think that's what holds a lot of people back from just taking that like first step to doing something that you really love or are passionate about. So, I'm glad that you found your full circle moment, and God got you where you are today. So.
I mean, him and his wife bought tickets to my show in our hometown this year. So
there you go. That's a W, right?
It's like at the end of the day, as much as like that relationship was difficult for me and it put me in a difficult spot, it also allowed the universe to challenge me. And I'm not like a pull him up by your bootstraps chick by any fucking means. But can I cuss? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. We're smoking weed on the pod. Yeah, this is definitely.
I'm like, we can do drugs, but can we curse? I genuinely believe that if you can take those situations that were painful for you and you can come out them stronger and better, you will persevere over anyone who ever wronged you in those situations when it's about you and it's about yourself improving. And I was willing to be bad at stuff. I was willing to try. I was willing to put myself out there. That person wasn't. I live a different life now because of that. That person lives a different life because of that. Both are okay. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let other people's evaluation of how I live my life, especially in relation to how they want to live their life. Right. If they're not doing what I want to be doing, what the fuck do I care? Right. Why do I care what they have to say? Why do I have to care? I mean, it's like, if you follow me on Instagram, I am on a crusade to literally tear down every troll that comes through my Facebook comments. I don't know what it is this year, but I have no fucking patience for a middle-aged man with daughters talking mean to women on the internet. I just don't have any patience for it. I'm like, you literally have daughters and you're doing, don't you have a job? Like, don't you
something better to be doing with your time?
Don't you need a budget? Like, go grocery shopping? What are you doing here? Right. And so I just spent a lot of my time going after these guys, and you wouldn't believe the amount of cognitive dissonance. A guy was like, "You're fat and disgusting," and I comment back. All I commented back was a picture of his face. I took a picture from his Facebook, screenshotted his face, zoomed in on it, and commented it as the response. And his response was, "You don't need to make this personal." And I'm like, you started this by saying that I was fat and disgusting. That like just the misunderstanding of how we relate to each other. It just has made me realize that my job in life is never to get to this stasis where everyone thinks I'm cool and good and perfect, and everyone in my life agrees with what I'm doing. My job in life is to get to a place where I am so satisfied and happy with what I'm doing that everything else is noise. I don't hear what anyone else is saying. And that's sort of where I'm at with stand-up, where like, when I first started, people were telling me that I shouldn't be doing it. But now I'm in a different phase where, people tell me that they do it because they saw me do it. There's people that came and saw me do stand-up and now do stand-up. And that's really cool to me. So,
100%. There you go. Trailblazer, trendsetter too. I mean, and I think you're 100% right there. I think, at the end of the day, the trolls are upset because you're doing you better than they're doing them. You know what I mean? And I think that's held true anytime I've seen those or have been in those internet blowouts, and we just live in this day and age where a lot of people just keyboard warriors, you know what I mean?
Well, and there's also a lot of men who literally cannot fathom that a fat woman wouldn't die for their approval. So the fact that I'm not like, oh, you don't think I'm beautiful? Please.
Right.
I really wish you would. You're so cool with your Ford F-250 and your fucking apartment. I wish you, like, they think we should be wanting their approval. So the idea that a woman who doesn't fit his ideal woman doesn't care about his approval is just like, unfathomable.
Yeah. Yeah, people entitled to their opinions, but you're right, and good on you for just fighting that fight and being on the crusade you're on. Because again, at the end of the day, you're doing you better than they're doing them. So fuck them, right?
As I always say, you know what? I am a cranky old bitch, and I will make time. So just remember that before you comment.
There you go. Hell yeah. So, going back to you starting doing stand up, when you were first getting on stage and kind of I'm thinking I'm going to do this. Was there any like stand up comedians that you really like looked to for like inspiration to define your style, or did you just kind of carve your own path?
I'm sure that there's a lot of influence in what I do now, and guys like Big J. Okerson and John Caparulo. I loved Yamanika Saunders. I love Monique. There's literally dozens of comics that I loved. I literally loved comedy. It was one of my main things. My Pandora radio. It was like heavy metal. Then there was a John Caparulo station. There was a John Heffron station. And then I think the other station was like just like stand-up comedy hits or something like that, one of the built-in Pandora stations. I just loved comedy. So I'm sure there's tons of influence. I grew up watching it. I grew up in the Comedy Central Presents generation, so I would come home from school and watch Comedy Central, and I would watch stand-up, and I would watch Premium Blend, and I would watch anything I could get my hands on. Last Comic Standing, that was a huge show for a while. So I'm sure there's tons of influence, but I would have to say probably for me, the most influential comics are female comics like Amy Schumer, obviously, Nikki Glaser, which is funny because people try and like comment that they're like, you're just another Amy Schumer. Like that's like a insult. Like, I'm like, you mean a millionaire comedian who's very successful? Ooh, you got me. And it's because I'm a woman talking about sex on stage, but they don't even recognize that every male comic talks about sex on stage. Nobody has anything to say about it. Because women do, if you're not a clean female comic, they're going to compare you to the Amys and the Nikkis of the world, but that's a compliment to me. So I'll take it. They inspired me. Guys like, I don't know. I really love like old school roasting styles. So I really loved Don Rickles. I loved like the like riffing and just like friendship, kind of like jabbing each other sort of aspect of comedy. There was so much comedy that I loved, and I couldn't wait to like do it. That the minute I started doing it, I did every show I could get my hands on. Like literally, I said yes to everything.
There you go.
I wouldn't say no to a single thing. But yeah, I would say those are like I named like 7 people, but those are a lot of the influence that you'll see in me today, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. And to your point, if you're passionate about something, it's all you're learning through osmosis. I think we all allocate a fair amount of time towards the things we're most passionate about. So even if before, I'm pursuing stand-up comedy doesn't mean I wasn't consuming it and still drawing influence from it, and kind of defining your style that way.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I feel, like, because it defined how I communicated with the world, to be honest. Like, I genuinely was one of those kids, and as a lot of my friends were, we would communicate in regurgitating movie lines or lines from stand-up albums, lines from Adam Sandler's CDs, things like that was just part of our language.
Yeah.
That it makes sense to me that now, of course, you would see bits and pieces of those comics. Like, it would be unfathomable that I'd be a completely unique act and that you wouldn't be able to see influence. It's just like musicians today. There's no such thing as a completely unique musician because we're all living under the influence of the people before us.
Of course.
That's really what it is.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So when you started performing...
I smoked too much weed already. That was the longest answer to who is your favorite comedian.
Again, this is why we have this podcast. We can have elevated conversations. Right?
Very elevated.
So when you were out there kind of cutting your teeth and starting to do stand-up, did you have any like role models or peers? I know you said you kind of found your core group of friends, but was there anyone who really kind of like took you under their wing to kind of help you go out there and carve your path?
There was quite a few people locally that really helped me carve my path. They really put me in the right rooms. They gave me vouchers. But like any young comic, I'll say you get yourself through those doors. People open the doors for you, but you get yourself through them.
You got to walk through it.
Yeah, you have to walk through it. You have to show up. You have to do the work. You have to somebody can say they're a great comedian, put them up. But if I put you up and you don't do well, then what did it get you? Got you nothing. I got you one set, when in reality for me as a comic, every time I'm getting on stage, I'm auditioning for future jobs. You never know. I've had people in the audience hire me to do birthday parties because they had a really good time or whatever. It's our job to present ourselves as something that is, not like I'm an object to be purchased, but I really am an act. You can buy my act. I will come do my act if you present me with the right parameters and money.
Yeah,
you can have me come out and do a performance. So, yeah.
No, that's a good way to look at it. You're right. You always got to put your best foot forward because you never know who's watching, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even that. It's just that I never want to not love doing stand-up. So I'm going to put my best foot forward because I'm trying really hard to be present and have a good time. And that's why even if I'm bombing now, and sometimes you'll see me lose my shit. That's not unlike me.
Right.
I will lose my shit sometimes. But sometimes when I'm bombing, I'm just having a really good time bombing because I'm present in the moment. And I will talk about it with the audience. I will say, I can feel that you guys aren't connected with me. And that's an even more powerful moment as a comic to be able to turn a room around. So I don't know. It all feels sort of like Zen to me at this point in my life. And maybe it's just because of how long I've been doing it. I don't know. I don't know how long you've been playing music, but I just feel like it gets to a point where it's so ingrained in me. It's such a part of me. It's like getting up and walking to the kitchen in the morning. Like 100%. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's what we all strive for, no matter what the creative outlet. I know at this point in my life, I've been playing music since I was 15. I'm 35. So for more than half my life now, I've been doing this. I don't know who the hell I'd be if I wasn't a musician, you know what I mean? But that's just a testament to you just going out there and doing you, right? And trailblazing.
I mean, I wouldn't have gotten into fitness if it wasn't for comedy, and that seems like crazy and weird and around. But before comedy, I was a very insecure person. I needed a lot of outside validation, and you would think that comedy would make that worse, and it did for a while.
Right.
But it also really gave me innate confidence, because to be a really great comic, you have to have confidence in your material. To be a really great performer, you have to have confidence in whatever you're presenting, no matter how the audience is reacting.
100%.
Because you're presenting your thing. You're not doing something for them. You're giving them something.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that. And I don't know if that sounds like pretentious, but that's just really how I mentally think about it. And I think when you think about it that way, it just makes it feel a lot less outside validation-y. Like I care a little bit less about the outside validation because I'm giving you something that I've created. Yeah. So now I'm in this place where I'm more confident than ever, and it I think allowed me to feel comfortable going to the gym as a fat person. Like I didn't feel comfortable before. I always felt discouraged. I never wanted to go back, but all of a sudden I was confident enough to just book an appointment with the trainer, and I was just confident enough to just start going to the gym all the time. And I think it took years and years of building a really strong foundation of confidence through doing stand-up to get me here. I literally would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for stand-up.
No, it's a good way to look at it though, because you're right. I mean, you wouldn't even be just thinking like that if you weren't taking pride in your work or being like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? This isn't this is about you. This is about me. This is what I'm taking pride in. I'm providing a service for you guys. And if you're not looking at it that way, like how else are you going to just develop that confidence? And that's a cool way to look at it. You know what I mean? Like this helped me build the confidence to get me where I'm trying to go. So that's a cool message and a good way to look at it. You know, So we're talking about just stand-up comedy. So you've been doing it for over 10 years now?
Yeah, I've been doing stand-up for 12 or 13 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it'll be 13 years next year.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be 13 years in January.
So at this point in your career, have you developed any like pre-show or post-show like rituals that you're doing before shows?
Well, I have obsessive compulsive disorder, so rituals are actually ingrained in my mental illness, and they were really bad for a while because OCD will tell you these fake stories, right? If I don't do this, my career is going to fail. If I don't do this, I'm going to have a bad set. So I had all these really insane rituals I felt like I had to do. I had to break out of that. I went back to therapy for a while. And now it's more about like, I just like being in the right headspace. So I always usually smoke a joint and listen to music that puts me in a happy mood. Like there's just certain songs, you know, that make you just feel like, like happy, positive, elevated. And there's comics that need to be in like a negative mood to go up, and that's valid too. Right. But I'm just like not that kind of comic. I need to be in a silly, goofy mood. So I like to smoke a little weed and I like to listen to a little bit of music, and that's my ritual. And If I can, ideally, I would love to be in a green room with some of my favorite people to riff with, and getting to riff before I go on stage. That's like the cherry on the icing on the cake.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like stretching before a workout, something like that. You're like,
Exactly.
okay, I'm in my zone. I know who I am and what I can do. So, okay, that's a cool way to look at it. I never really, I mean, again, comparing music to stand up, it makes sense because I know before I'm trying to play, I need a little liquid courage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, usually a little bit of silence before I play. Personally, it just kind of helps. Like, all right, it's about to be really loud. You know, just I think it's about setting a tone. Like you were just saying, if your act is I'm trying to be silly, goofy, and I'm trying to listen to something that's going to get me in a silly, goofy mood, or just a happy place or something.
Yes.
You know, I think you're right. I never really thought about it. Again, not doing stand up myself, but if I was a negative act or something where, you know, if your bit is to be a grumpy old man, it makes sense to kind of put yourself in a negative headspace before you get on stage.
You
too.
might need to be, and some people might need to be in that negative headspace in order to put up the armor to go on stage, and that's fair. Being on stage is a very scary thing. It's like a revelation for most of us as comics, and especially those of us who are lifelong performers, when we find out that public speaking is the number one fear in America.
Oh yeah.
And that's crazy to me because it's like I have so many other snakes. You know, like there's so many other things I'm afraid of before public speaking. But okay, live your life.
There you go. Right.
You know, but to me, I love speaking in public. I love getting in front of a group of people, and it just feels like the last bastion of communal connection to me. I can stand in front of a group of 150 to up to, at this point in my career, I've done up to a room of 700 people, and I can connect them all universally. Even for 3 seconds, those people are all laughing at the same time at the same concept, and they're having a universal connected experience in one room.
Yeah.
And I think it's like one of the coolest fucking things on the planet. And I will always nerd out about it. And some comics are too serious and they need to like be in a serious space, but I'm like, I might be telling dick jokes, but this shit is spiritual to me, dog. Like, and that's for real, you know?
No, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, the great equalizer. It's all art, and that's just the power of it. We can all relate and come together, especially in a day and age where I feel like everyone is leaning into the things that polarize us, you know, and that's a part of the identity. At the end of the day, there's more that unites us than divides us, right?
Or at concerts. Like I go to a lot of heavy metal concerts where maybe there's like a bridge leading into a breakdown where the lead singer won't say anything and the whole crowd in unison sings this bridge back at this person.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing that humans do.
Yeah.
And it's proof to me that we are still much more united than we are divided if we can just remember what the fuck it means to be a human being.
Yeah.
Which it's just to live and create and be kind. And that's it. That's my vote for me.
There you go. Hell yeah. So you've performed here, like we said, here a few times now. You performed at the NuWu Comedy Club a few times.
Very high on dabs. You can see the one set I actually posted the whole set. It's on just the audio is on YouTube. But I'm very high on dabs for that set. So you can hear me talk about it and you can hear me have to interact with the crowd.
There you go. So what's the experience like from the audience? Because obviously, you know, we're a unique venue being a 420 friendly space where, you know, the entire audience is more likely to be on cannabis than alcohol compared to, I'm assuming, most comedy venues. Yep. What's that like for you as a performer?
You know, weed shows have a bad reputation because historically, stoned people aren't the most reactive. You really want people to be like laughing and, you know, gasping if it's a moment where they need to gasp, or being quiet when it's a moment but when everyone's a little stoned, their reactions are a little delayed. They're not thinking. Sometimes people are falling asleep. If you can wade through that, it's a really fun place to do stand-up, because I feel like, especially here in the Sky High Lounge, because everyone's a little stoned and everyone's staring at this one space, the minute you start interacting with the crowd, at least for me, because I do a lot of crowd work as a comic, you have this like communal experience where it feels like we're all friends and we're all laughing because like, oh, how silly that Joey's saying that thing that Joey always says, even though we don't know Joey, we all just met Joey. But it feels like we know him because we all just did dabs in this room together and we're having a good time, and we no longer have to smoke in our parents' basement, and that's pretty fucking cool.
Amen. Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, I know, having been here for a few shows myself, I wish I could remember. I know I've heard similar bits from, you know, comedians on stage, but I know one was like, specifically, it's like, y'all are looking at me like, why is the TV talking back?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I was like,
well, and literally, if you listen to the dab set, I talked to a guy in the audience because he was asleep, and he like snapped into consciousness and I just happened to be looking at him when it happened. And it's like, of course we're all on drugs, and sometimes comics take it personally, but if you can remember that we're all high and we're all on drugs and you can just have a good time.
Yeah.
Like this crowd has let me get away with murder. Like I will go to no lengths to roast the shit out of this audience and they eat it up because they're in a great mood and they're having a good time, and somebody's literally bringing whatever weed they want to their table.
Yeah.
I mean, this is literally, if I was a stoner from like a baby, I'm not encouraging babies to smoke weed.
For the record.
But if it was like normal for babies to smoke weed and it was like something like kids could dream about, like I used to dream about there being a KFC unlimited buffet when I was a kid. I was a very fat kid. But I used to dream about that. If I could dream about that for weed, it would be like that. It would be like going to like a jazz club type environment.
There you go.
Where I can listen to music or play board games or chill with my friends and just bullshit. And I can just order whatever joint I want. Just come. And I can't roll, so this is like ideal.
There you go. So this is my happy place, right?
Yeah, because I can't roll and I don't know how to load a dab. So without my Dr. Dabber, without another human being loading the dab for me, I don't get to do one.
I feel that. I took the opportunity during the pandemic to learn how to roll because I'm like, well, I got all this time on my hands. Really?
Yeah, I couldn't. My husband thinks that he loves to make fun of me. He is from the Midwest, so he can roll while he's driving a car. Like,
oh wow, yeah,
he can do it one-handed.
Yeah, I've never been that guy. I was already in the cannabis industry for like better part of 5 years by the time the pandemic even happened. So I'm like, have I really been doing this long? I've just been spoiled with pre-rolls and things like that. So I took the opportunity to learn, but I feel that too. Because for the longest time, I'd be like, okay, we're having a big sesh. The friends over, I'm like, so who's rolling the joint? I'm like, really, Tom? I'm like, that's whatever. I digress. You know what I mean?
Well, and at this point in my career, because of my social media following, people know I do, like, I'm a stoner. Like, if you want me to interact with your weed company and I believe in your brand, I'm going to do it because I love cannabis and I'm a cannabis advocate. But like, people will send me things like this really great company sent me these really cool raw wraps, just a full cannabis leaf that had been cured for wrapping. But I can't fucking roll. Yeah. So I was like, these are really cool. But
yeah, these are cool. I don't know how to use them, but
Thank you so much. Can you give me a cone of this?
Yeah, right. Yeah, please and thanks. No, I've had a few of those too. I've had ones with like rose petals and things like that too. But then with like, if it's in a cone, it's more nerve wracking. I feel like to even pack it than a paper because then you get a hold and you're like, well, fuck that whole thing.
Or I don't know if you've ever tried those King Palms with like the poppable flavors.
Yep.
It's the same thing when you one wrong move when you're packing one of those and it crumbles.
Yeah. And then the whole thing is just so defeating. I'm like, am I going to start this whole process over again? I've already been trying to roll a joint for 10 minutes, you know? Like,
well, and it's so much weed to fill a King Palm.
Yeah. It's true. I haven't had a King Palm in a while. I kind of forgot. I hope they're still around.
You can get them in the Midwest.
Okay.
Every time I go to Colorado, I snatch up because there's this one place in Fort Collins that I know for sure sells them, and their dispensary usually does. And I will snatch up like 5 packs of them and bring them home with me.
Just load up, right?
Yeah, because they're just so cute and yummy. I love them.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? You know? Hell yeah. So you host weekly podcasts for Metal Sucks and Rise to Offend.
Yeah.
How did you get started podcasting?
So Rise to Offend's on a hiatus, but it's a really great one to go back and listen to. It's a documentary podcast.
Okay.
If you go back into the annals of it, it was just us bullshitting and talking to people and interviewing people and being insane. But we got to a point where we decided to be a little more structured, and we did documentaries on audio-based documentaries. So there's footage. There's like you hear the audio of footage, you hear the audio of interviews. And it's kind of us commenting on these people that society deemed offensive and their impact on society. But Metal Sucks is like, I've been doing it for so long now, almost a decade. We interview the biggest metal bands in the world. Guys like Killswitch Engage and Guar, like some of the more popular bands. If they have a new release coming up, basically they'll come on our podcast. My co-host will do an interview with them, but beforehand, he and I or one of the other talking heads on the podcast, we talk about metal news. So we make fun of bands. We, that recently there was a band in the news that their name rhymes with Schmaz I Lay Dying, and they were in the news, and we were not allowed to talk about them on our podcast because I openly beef with Tim Lemby, says I think he's a bitch, and and that's just because you don't get to try and kill your wife and then just act like that's normal and go on and be like, yeah, buy tickets to my tour.
It's been a very interesting career to monitor post getting out of jail. Like, so you're just back, huh? Yeah.
Well, basically, long story long, may or may not allegedly have received communication from a certain band's representation that we were no longer allowed to speak about them on our podcast. So we basically do that. We just talk shit about the bands that we don't like. We discuss things like, you know, are there any arena bands anymore? Like, is Metallica going to be the last arena band? Like, we are all metal fans from different generations. I live in the screamo East Coast hardcore generation. A lot of death metal more under my belt. Petter, who's like the main host, he's more in like the old school metal. He loves it all, though. He is deep in the metal world. If it's metal or deep punk, he knows it, and he's got it on vinyl. And then there's Gooch and Sylvia. They all are rock DJs here in Comp 92.3 FM. They're also on the podcast, and they have their own taste. So we all kind of represent different genres under the metal umbrella, and we just discuss it, you know. And people write in, they ask us questions or tell us stories, and we discuss them, and you know, we just kind of bullshit.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I mean, as a musician myself, and I'm not playing in a metal band these days, but it's definitely what I was cutting my teeth on, you know, in my younger years. When I saw that, I was like, did I read that right? You know what I mean? Because I feel like I've been reading about and you know, watching videos and trying to just study up for this interview and everything like that. And I was like, hold up, did that say metal sucks?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. We can vibe out here on some music. That'll be a whole other podcast. We can sit here for an hour,
for
I'm sure.
I mean, I was at Lorna Shore last week,
Okay.
you know, when we were young.
Right.
Like, I love metal. I love rock. I love punk. I love hip hop and rap, too. I think those genres actually hold hands. It's my hot take on metal sucks a lot, is that, you know, rap is metal as well.
Yeah.
And people don't really want to talk about that. But, you know, there's influence in both. And there's literal rap artists that have topped the metal charts in the past 10 years, but we also don't want to talk about that. Anyways,
yeah, you're right. It's definitely a divisive topic.
Yeah, it's a divisive topic. But yeah, I just love music, and I always have. And as like a young, disenfranchised, weird kid, music was like how I connected with people. And in my hometown, and I'm from Fallon, Nevada, we used to have this coffee shop called Jive and Java. And this really cool chick named Corey owned it, and she would get these bands that were performing in Reno every weekend to come through Fallon first. So if they were performing in Reno on Saturday or on Friday, they would either come on the opposite day, and we could see them for $5. They would play in this little coffee shop, and I saw bands like No Peoples from China that you know, I would have not been able to see because it was in the Reno Event Center, and I saw them for $5 in a coffee shop in my tiny little farm town.
That's so cool.
And so music became ingrained in like my experience and how I see the world and how I process. You know, my friend and I talk about it, like just being in the crowd at a live music show, the way the music resonates in my chest, I feel like it heals me from stuff. And it's something that like I just feel like only music people get. Like you just have, like, I have a friend, she goes to concerts like once every 3 months. Like she's booking something, she's going.
There you go.
And then that's how she processes. And I get it, because sometimes it's the only way I can like get out some of the things I need to get out. You know, I went to a Killswitch Engage show, and I had been in such a bad mood all week, and I came out of the show just a different person. I was ready to like take on the rest of the month, you know? So I think it's like, yeah, it's the universal, it's another unifying thing. I guess that's sort of my theme as a human, I guess, is that I just really seek unifying experiences, the collective, you know. I want to experience that in whatever way possible.
100%. No, and that's a beautiful way to look at the world. I mean, at the end, like we said earlier here, you know, there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think it takes art, comedy, those things that really help us look at it through a different lens, you know what I mean? And be like, cool, I don't really care who you're voting for at the end of the day. We both like Killswitch. Fuck yeah, right? You know?
Well,
like,
and here's my thing is like, I do care who you're voting for, but here's what I will say is like, I feel like and this is like kind of a juvenile way but it's like how no matter where I am, there's always one girl in an audience, like one little hot girl who wants to act like she doesn't fart. I'll tell a fart joke and she'll make a face or intimate that it's like gross. And I'm like, you fart, bitch. Like, we all fart. Like, we are not pretending.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I love about comedy is it's a moment for all of us to go, we all fart. We don't have to pretend here.
Yeah.
Like, at work, we're all walking around pretending we don't fart. We're all holding our farts. We're all pretending we don't fart. We're waiting till we get in our car at the end of the day, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Like that we hold our farts all day. Just we all know each other farts, but we don't fart next to each other. Right. But I'll fart next to the person that I have sex with, and none of it makes sense to me. That's my fart diatribe, but that's what it is to me. It is unifying. There are things in comedy that we're going to talk about that you cannot deny that you do or experience. Yeah. And there's not very many things you can do in life. Same thing with music. There's things that people are going to sing about that you're like, that shit hits, you know? There's a reason Kissed by a Rose still hits.
Yeah.
There's a reason every time we hear it, even though it's like kind of like a cheesy American song at this point, every time we hear da 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 da, we're all like, yeah, man.
Yeah, you're like, man, I don't know why I feel so emotional.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it's a testament to good art. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, if you're saying something that's going to strike a chord with people, they're going to remember it, right?
Yeah.
So, that's cool. That's a good way to look at it. You know, I think as any artist, you know, what can we do to unify and not tear each other down? Because I know there's a lot of that, especially. Yeah.
Well, there's room
online.
for every performer. There's room for every influencer. Like this idea that you need to be the one or the better is like ridiculous when you can be reaching across aisles. You know, comedians and musicians and comedians and influencers can be helping each other up. You know, on a like on a Russian gymnast joint, you know, like crawling up a wall, holding each other up. Like you can elevate each other. You don't need to take away from each other. You can actually amplify each other much easier than you can by trying to tear each other down so you're the only one who gets spotlight.
Yeah. No, and that's it. You know what I mean? That work together, you know, strength in numbers. We don't need to be climbing on top of each other. You can lift up the people around you, you know?
100.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So this is probably a good part here to start talking about the future, maybe doing some dabs, because it's been a minute since I guess we smoked some weed. You're familiar with this device because you got one in your NuWu Cup bag.
I did.
Dr. Dabber XS.
And I read my instruction manual. I am in this new phase of my life where I read my instruction manual. Life-changing, you guys. I mean, early 20s Jozalyn could never, but 36-year-old Jozalyn be reading the instruction manual.
There you go.
And it matters.
Hey, no, I wish I had the attention span because I try, and then I get halfway through this, and I'm like, fuck this. I just want to do a dab.
But the great thing about 2024 is you can just scan the QR code in the instruction manual and it'll take you to a YouTube video.
Work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, and the YouTube video for the Dr. Dabber XS doesn't even have words.
Oh.
It's just pictures. Pictures only.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to get like the demo firsthand, so I didn't have to go watch the videos, but okay, Dr. Dabber, there you go.
It's actually, I mean, this is like not, I mean, I know I've like said a lot of kind things about things you've given me, but I genuinely love the products and I will never speak kindly about products I don't like. It is the one e-dab rig I've ever used that like I actually can get a dab out of at home. I've never been able to do a dab without assistance.
Yeah, I don't know. E-devices have, I feel, a certain amount of learning curve. So it is like they're all different and have their nuances, so they can be kind of I don't know.
I feel like this is pretty user friendly because if I could get like an actual dab out of it,
right.
And I couldn't even like figure out how to use a dab pen, you know, like the one where you just put the little and you close it up. I couldn't, but this I got a real dab out of.
These are pretty. They make them really easy to understand. I know actually it's funny I say that because I want to say on the last podcast we dropped I was struggling with one, so hopefully that's not what's going to happen.
Well, I'm an expert, so I can help.
So you said I've watched the fucking training.
I
read the training manual.
The manual. Did you not hear me?
Yeah, she's like, I
Page
haven't
34.
read. I was sitting there on the other languages being like, damn, it makes more sense in German, you know. But let's see here. I'm going to load this sucker up and we'll go ahead, pass this on here and do a dab. And get this sucker started. Let's see here, please. Press and hold. Yes. So you already know the score. As soon as that vibrates, that's going to be ready for you.
She's a little sealed here.
And we are smoking on some Mojo. I don't know where the strain info went. Is this the one right here? Let's see here. We got some permanent marker cured resin. I probably should have checked beforehand, but don't worry. There's no
You
pinene.
got me smoking markers, dog.
It's got some caryophyllene, some linalool, and some limonene. So
Cario. Do you know what cario occurs naturally in?
Pepper?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's more that like
when you feel
spicy
that,
when you
like,
get the cough, you know.
But cario is great for anti-inflammatory properties. It's great for stress. It's great for sort of like that chill out evenness. So if you're looking for that and you're kind of afraid of more psychoactive effects, I always tell people go cario, man.
Yeah, you can definitely taste the pepper on that one. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love peppers myself. I'm always cooking with them at home, so I hear a little heat, a little tickle in the throat though. Sometimes you get like too much cario in a product and you're just like coughing up a lung after you're done.
Especially because especially some of the AeroPro vape cartridges, if they have cario in their terps, you can taste, because I don't know what it is about their process, but you can taste the terpenes in their cartridges.
Oh yeah, no, they do a great job.
And when it's cario dominant, you literally I will sneeze. Like I'm using real pepper.
Yeah.
And like I'm a pepper girl. I put cracked pepper on my cottage cheese.
Oh, there you go.
I love pepper.
Oh yeah. I do the same. I love some pepper, but it is when you get the tickle in the nose, you're like, am I about to sneeze mid-dab? Because that's not fun. That's not a good place to be.
I'm like, but I have this horrible habit from being a cigarette smoker where no matter what I'm smoking, I French inhale.
Oh, okay.
Even when I smoke cigars.
Okay.
Which you're not supposed to inhale those at all.
I've been there a few times. Get a little sick in the stomach after that, right?
I don't. That's how I know I was born to have nicotine.
There you go. There you go. Said I was a real nicotine user through and through. French inhaling a cigarette, man. That's a vibe. I haven't even thought about nicotine in a while. It kind of makes me want some, you know.
I have a rule. I will do cigars. Weirdly enough, it might happen at music events, but at a lot of comedy events, they offer complimentary cigars or people will have cigars. So I won't smoke cigarettes anymore because if I have one, it's over.
There you go.
I'm going to be a cigarette mom. I find me with runny eyeliner in a dusty old van smoking my Virginia Slims.
There you go. Be like, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you get your brother? I'm ready to go. We got to go to 7-Eleven and get dinner. Like, that's where I'm going if I pick up another cigarette. So I can't. I was hospitalized, kind of like what got me out of like smoking, and actually what got me when I got back into smoking weed got me into the chemistry of it, because there's things that people like don't even think about. Like if you have asthma like me, I have a lot of breathing issues. When you're smoking flower, you should actually go for a drier strain. Dry strains will be less strenuous on your lungs than a more moist strain. The moisture content is what's going to make you cough. So if you can get like a dry crunchy shake and roll a joint and you're normally like a big cougher, it's going to be way easier for you. So it's shit like that like got me into it, because I really struggled with my lungs after I got out of the hospital. It was like very scary. They were like, you're going to die if you keep smoking cigarettes. And I was like, so I should stop smoking cigarettes is what you're saying.
You're saying I need to quit?
So I can't have a menthol when I get out of here. And so I just had to quit. And then I was like, do I need to quit smoking weed? And my doctor's like, well, not really, because like it's not really affecting you the way that cigarettes are. And he was like, and as long as you don't have another episode like this, I don't see any reason not to. And since I've started considering things like moisture content, type of weed I'm smoking, strain, terpenes, all these things, like my lungs don't suffer. Like some people talk about it and like they'll do like dabs or they'll smoke a certain flower and they'll like wake up with like a lung hangover. I don't get that. Because I choose weed that is going to not do that for me. Right. It's different for everyone, but I mean, you can kind of make those choices.
No, it's interesting you say that, because I was in a situation where I punctured my lungs and I was using just a dry herb vape after that. I didn't smoke for a long time before I actually came to work in the industry. So I used a volcano vaporizer exclusively for years. And it was interesting because I still had like some issues. And like to this day, because I clearly smoke flower these days. Yeah. I still have a volcano and I use it often, but like it's a different like lung feeling. Sometimes I almost feel like more like dried out, more irritated sometimes after like vaping than smoking. Yes. But it's probably the moisture content because it's water vapor.
It's water vapor.
You know, I know for a long time there, because when I was doing it exclusively, there'd be times where I'd just get like a chest cold because I was just doing too much. I would still smoke a lot of weed. I would just be vaping it instead of actually smoking it. I mean, it's the cleanest way to smoke, but it's probably just the irritant from the actual
it's the like, water vapor,
which is interesting because I never really understood that.
It's
but
why
that makes
bongs
sense.
will tire your chest out. You know, a bong is great for clearing out like the carcinogens and the additives and stuff that people kind of want to get clear when they're running their smoke through water. But it also adds moisture content to your smoke. So it's going to be rougher on your lungs. Right. It's why you cough more when you smoke a bong. It's not that the bong is making the weed stronger. Yeah. Like it's the moisture content. Like,
yeah. That's so I mean, I got to say, usually on this podcast, like
schooled.
I'm the weed expert here, more or less, and this is cool. I like sitting across the table.
I mean, somebody could comment and totally prove me wrong, but that is from what I learned.
No, I mean it makes sense. That tracks. I'm gonna do some experiments. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just treat myself as a guinea pig. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. But, so we're getting to the tail end of this episode here. I wanted to talk about your weight loss journey, because if you don't follow Ms. Jozalyn Sharp, you talk a lot about it on your Instagram, and it's a really I feel inspiring part of your story. So I want to talk a little bit about that. According to your Instagram, from like 2 days ago, you made a post that you are down so far 60 pounds in your journey to #journey to lose 100 pounds? Right?
Yeah, that's my goal. I'm trying to lose 100 pounds and I'm 60% of the way there. So I'm over halfway there. It's been insane because I've been reflecting on this a lot. Last year, I was a completely different person. I needed to walk with a cane part of the year, like just depending on how bad my arthritis was. I was pre-diabetic. I had high blood pressure. My husband and I have been struggling to get pregnant for a long time. And you know, getting healthy is one of your last bastions to having a good fertility journey. There was just so many things in my life that were a struggle, and I felt like there was a lot more accountability I could have with myself on how I was feeling my body and how I was using my body. I didn't want to lose weight because of my size or because it was better to be smaller, any of those things. I loved myself at 300 pounds the same way I love myself now. But what it was more about was I wanted to feel strong. And at the end of the day, when I was accountable, there was no other person standing in the way of me feeling strong than me. And so I made a couple choices and I stuck to those choices, and it became addicting. And pretty soon I set bigger goals and bigger goals and bigger goals. And it's just sort of snowballed. And now I have muscles and, and I plan on getting bigger ones. And I plan on continuing, to heights that I didn't even know I could. I posted about it yesterday that Jozalyn last year at this time would kill to be me right now. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about that. But in 9 months, since January 26th was when I had my first workout with my trainer, in 9 months, I've changed my life completely. I am no longer pre-diabetic. I no longer have high blood pressure. There's no signs of infertility in my body whatsoever. So, if I don't have a baby at this point, it's just because, God's like, no thanks. But, outside of that, like, it's like my health is a completely different thing. And I posted a video. I went and had a follow-up. I needed a hip replacement last year. I no longer need a hip replacement. The inflammation's at a place that I don't anymore. And the craziest part is that is 8 things on a list of thousands of things that have improved in my life because I have made movement and fitness a part of and fuel, and looking at food as fuel. Like, I will eat whatever I want, but also at the same time, I now understand the biological consequences of it. If I eat French fries for breakfast, then later in the day, I'm going to feel sluggish. I can prepare for that. It's a different type of experience with food for the first time in my life. I had a horrible eating disorder growing up, as literally almost every American person does from living in our society. And I had to change my relationship with food. My relationship with food was going to kill me one way or another. And I needed it to be different. And now my relationship with food is different. I look at food and I see calories still, but I look at food and I see calories as fuel. How can I use that fuel? It's how many grams of protein am I getting for the calories? It's not about the calories so I'm not fat. It's not about the calories so I'm good enough. It's not about the calories so somebody loves me. It's about the calories because I'm trying to bench 135, dog. Like, there you go. So it's like a very different experience. And, I will scream it from the mountaintops that if you don't have a good relationship with your body, pick up a barbell. Just do it. Just go pick up a barbell. You've been thinking about it. I thought about it for years. I wished and wished and wished I was a gym girly. And why couldn't I be? And now I am.
There you go. That's a powerful message and really inspiring. And I mean, you said 9 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's just to lose 60 pounds in 9 months, is a testament to your grind and the fact that you're in there and you're falling in love with the process. You know what I mean? And we just had on one of our last podcasts, our boy Penwood was talking about how you have to motivate yourself. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like you were just saying, you know what I mean? The only obstacle in the way was you. So what can you do to have that paradigm shift to get you where you're trying to go so that you can, attack your goals head on? And it sounds like you're doing that, and it's very inspiring.
What really struck me was this person posted, her name's Mama Swole on Instagram and TikTok, but her caption said on the video, I don't remember what the video was, but the caption is what struck me. It said, self-discipline is the highest form of self-love. And it really hit me. And I just really thought about the fact that I wanted discipline, that I lacked motivation, but I really lacked discipline, because discipline is going and doing it when you lack motivation. And that's what I needed. I needed to break the understanding that I was never going to want to go and do it every time. I was never going to want to get up at 4 a.m. so I could get the workout in beforehand because I have plans with my family after work. I was never going to want to do that.
Right.
But I had to be willing to do that. And that was and it's going to change I can feel already the spider web effect of understanding how far I can push myself and it still isn't uncomfortable.
Right.
I can push myself far, reap a ton of rewards without causing discomfort in my life, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Sign me the fuck up. I'm here to push myself and see what can happen. And that's really what it is for me, is that discipline. With discipline, I can do anything.
There you go. I mean, it's, the old saying, it's not the good days that define us, it's the bad ones, right? And then it's how we show up on those bad days.
Yeah.
So, good on you. And it's a very inspiring story. And then thank you for sharing that. I think
thanks,
a lot of people could learn from just those words right there. So, we are getting close here to having to open up this bar. So we're going to move here to the future. I've got a couple questions here for you. So you've had a ton of success in your career. In 2018, you were stand-up I'm sorry, you were a semifinalist.
Can we
for the
rewind
NBC?
and call my mom and you say that again?
Okay. Let's pull it up, right? You know what I mean? I think we can Bluetooth her in,
You've
right?
had a ton of success in your career.
Well, you had a ton of success in your career. In 2018, you were the stand-up NBC semifinalist. You performed at such legendary events such as Life is Beautiful and Skankfest 2024, as well as put your comedy special, 510, 280, out last year. So what's next for you?
I'm really at this point in my career where I'm focused on growing my audience. So I'm going to be I'm actively on the road and have been for a while, but I'll be doing a lot more venues in a lot more cities. And I'll be putting out a lot more content. And I'm getting ready to launch another podcast, so my third podcast. And there's already another one on the back burner that's getting ready to launch behind that one. So I'll have a lot of content out that people can consume. If they enjoy me and they want to hear me do the violent jump from being philosophical to being a immature 13-year-old. That's my specific spice, if you like that.
That's awesome. So make sure you guys are following at Jozalyn Sharp so you can stay tuned to all those projects coming down the pipeline. Last question here for you. It's a loaded one we ask all of our guests here. So if you were talking to a younger version of yourself, you know, the next generation of female stand-up comics, what advice would you give that person?
I would tell her that she shouldn't give a fuck what any of those crusty, dusty, stupid, lame-ass, do-nothing people have to think about her.
Yeehaw, louder for the people in the back, right? There you go.
That's what I would tell her.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's wise words if I ever heard them, you know? Fuck 'em.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like antithetical to my woo saw, let's all connect thing, but
Yeah.
I believe in being both sides. I am a human being. I am a fully formed, full spectrumed being, meaning that I can both tell you to fuck off and love you in the same breath. It's just, you need to understand how to interpret it, and you can decide whether you're on the side of the fence getting the fuck you or the love you. That's really what it is.
He said, that's on you, not me, right?
Yeah, I am not responsible for your actions.
There you go. There you go. Well, awesome. So this has been an amazing episode. I want to thank Ms. Jozalyn Sharp for being on the podcast. Tell everyone watching where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me if you go to jozlynsharp.com. That's JOZALYN, sharp like a sharp knife.com. It has everything. It has it'll have my most recent upcoming shows, but you can DM me on Instagram, your city, and I will tell you when I'm coming there. Or you can sign up for my text list. That the more numbers, the more people I've registered in a city, the more likely I am to come there. But yeah, you can find me all over. I'm posting all the time. TikTok is where I post the most insane stuff. So if you want to see the weird stuff, go there.
There you go. All right. That's how you create a funnel right there. Awesome. Well, I want to thank Jozalyn for coming on. Make sure you guys watch her special 510 280 on YouTube or Amazon Prime, and make sure that you're following all the NuWu handles at NuWu Sky LV. Figure it out. There's links. You can do your homework. But awesome. Well, this has been NuWu Sessions. We out. Ms. Jozalyn, that was a great episode.
Was it?
Yeah, that was awesome.